I remember the first core set 2011 pack I ever opened more than a decade ago had a very new card in it called Stormtide Leviathan. It was this massive creature, and I immediately threw it into one of my makeshift 60 card decks that I had made from booster packs that I had bought from Walmart over the past year. It was a terrible deck, but I still remember that first time I was able to cast Stormtide Leviathan against my older brother. He had no answers against it, and I ended up winning that game. That, I think, was one of my first experiences with a mini dopamine high of casting a bomb in Magic the Gathering. In this video, I'll be covering unpopular big spells and bombs, specifically in mono blue. But if people do enjoy this video, then I hope to be able to create similar videos, but for other colors in the future. This video is actually thanks to a comment left by StormCamplin3753, who asked for bombs or big creatures. They didn't specify blue, but I figured, like I said, I could make a series out of this. If this is your first time here, I actually make videos based off of the comments that people leave on my videos. So drop a comment of a topic that you would like me to cover, and if it gets pinned, then that will become a video just like this one. And for the purposes of this video, I'm considering a bomb to be a permanent that can win you games over time if it goes unanswered. So think like Terror of the Peaks. It might not win you the game the turn it comes down, but if people don't remove it, over the next few turns, it will likely accrue so much value that you'll just win the game. I'd consider things like Craterhoof Behemoth as game finishers, meaning you save those for the turn that you're planning to win. I'm not covering finishers in this video. Specifically, I'm covering those bombs that, if left unanswered, will likely win you the game, or the instants and sorceries that are included in this. It's because they're high CMC, and I love those effects. So yeah, this is the bomb and the big spells video. We'll start off real quick with a few honorable mentions that were a little too popular for this video, most of which were in over 1% of decks. So Mind's Dilation is the first one, which was in 1.34% of decks, which for many is still pretty unpopular, but for this, it was just too much. This card is crazy as a bomb because it counts whenever an opponent casts their first spell each turn and not specifically on their turn. So the ceiling would be 12 times in one turn cycle because, in a world that 3 opponents cast a spell on each turn around the table, that would be 12. And in decks that are running between 30 or 40 lands, you're statistically have a higher chance of hitting that non-land card. Next up is Aminatu's Augury, which is in 1.27% of decks that can play it. This card costs 8 mana and gets so much value whenever I play it. Not only can you put a land onto the battlefield untapped, what I love about this is that it doesn't make you cast the spells as part of the resolution of this. So you have until the end of your turn to cast the spells for free that you choose, and this allows you to set up the most optimal plays with the cards that you have in your hand and the ones that are exiled with Aminatu's Augury. Our third one is Clone Legion, which is in exactly 1% of decks that are able to play it, and this is kind of like an army on a stick card. I love to play it in decks that I'm more focused on non-creature spells, and I still need an army or a board to protect me. People build some pretty crazy boards and they play huge creatures, so being able to copy all of those creatures an opponent has is just really good, and it's even better if you're able to, have a token doubler or something like that. The last honorable mention is Blatant Thievery, which wasn't too popular because it's only in 0.71% of decks. It just didn't make the cut because there were several other cards I wanted to go into more in depth. This card says that you can gain control of target permanent from each of your opponents, so even if they didn't have any good creatures on board, you could play this as like a pay 7, ramp 3 lands permanently, and set each opponent back one turn with their land count because, you can steal their lands. I'm curious if any of you have played any of these honorable mentions, and if so, let me know what you think about them. Before we get into the actual cards, I want to start doing something new where I highlight a patron in each video to get to know this awesome community better. This video's patron highlight is J-Ro, who is originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but is currently living in Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada. So my condolences if Magic cards are pretty expensive. But yeah, their favorite commander is Verazal the Split Current, and one of their pet cards or favorite unpopular cards that they don't see played very often is Urtai's Meddling. Ooh, yeah, that's a banger. Great choice with that one. But yeah, thanks so much, J-Ro. I appreciate the support. And moving forward, I'm excited to highlight more about the people who play, this awesome game that we love. Anyways, now our first big blue bomb today is Tidespout Tyrant, which is in 0.95% of decks that can play it. This is an 8 mana Djinn that is 5/5, has flying, and it says whenever you cast a spell, return target permanent to its owner's hand. Yeah, that's crazy good. Few things about this card. First of all, this says target permanent, not just non-land permanent. So if you do want to be a savage, as you're casting a bunch of cantrips, you could literally just return every land that an opponent has to their hand. And so that's super dangerous if your opponents leave this untapped, or I guess on the board, because if you don't want to be removing their creatures but want to permanently hurt them, then you could just return their lands to their hand. Another thing is that this works with any spell. It doesn't have anything that mentions non-creature or whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, which is pretty common for blue creatures that have cast triggers. And so that is also just powerful. It works with literally any spell. Also, a 5/5 flying creature is not that bad at all. I'll be honest, I usually prefer Hullbreaker Horror because of the flash and the ability to interact with spells on the stack, but returning anything can put yourself very far ahead, like I said. So this is typically a removal magnet, but if you do have a way to cheat this creature into play, or you're able to continue casting several spells after you get this onto the battlefield, or have ways to protect it, then yeah, this card can just do so much. Our next card is Mnemonic Deluge, which is in 0.89% of decks that can play it. This is a 9 mana spell, so big spell. It costs 6 generic and 3 blue pips for a sorcery that says exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Copy that card 3 times. You may cast the copies without paying their mana costs. Exile Mnemonic Deluge. So yeah, this one is just wild. A few things that I love about this. First of all, it works for a card in any graveyard, not just yours. So if an opponent has a wild instant or sorcery card that they had cast this game, then yeah, you could just pick that, snipe it out of their graveyard, and cast it 3 times. A second part is that you copy the cards and you cast the copies. I'm actually going to bring this up for a different card later on in this video, but that is actually very important, that it says that you can cast the copies, which is why I play this in my Emoti deck. Once upon a time, I used to play extra turn spells in that deck, but it was just too powerful, so I took out all of my extra turn spells in that. On multiple occasions, I cast Mnemonic Deluge and targeted Time Stretch to take 6 extra turns. But the craziest part about this is that when I cast Mnemonic Deluge, that cascades, and since you cast the copies of the spell that you make, Time Stretch also cascades into spells, 9 or less 3 times. And so that's the important part. The fact that it copies the card and it says you may cast the copies without paying their mana cost, you're able to trigger that cascade each time for each copy. So that's pretty crazy. I play this in most of my Spellslinger decks that trigger with multiple cast triggers. So things like Fiery Inscription, I get 1 trigger for casting Mnemonic Deluge, and then I'll get 3 more triggers for whatever copy I decide to cast. Next up, we have Elminster's Simulacrum, which is in 16,159 decks. This is a 6 mana instant that costs 4 generic and 2 blue, and it says, for each opponent, you create a token that's a copy of up to 1 target creature that player controls. So yeah, this can create a token of the best creatures your opponents control. And what's really nice about this is that this happens at instant speed, which opens up the playability of this card just so much more, because you can use it to set up blockers when they're least expecting it. You can cast it right before your turn to have the big copies before you get to your turn to do something really big. It also, I included this one as opposed to Blatant Thievery because it doesn't make you as big of a target. You know, you're just making copies, but you allow people to keep theirs. So while you're not guaranteed to necessarily get the max value of 3 amazing creatures, some commanders can of course make up for it, like Brutaclad, who can turn the other 2 into the best token that you just copied, or also someone like Calamax can make 6 tokens instead of just 3. And so I do like this because, yeah, it's instant speed. You don't make people really mad for stealing their cards and instantly become the public enemy or the arch enemy, but you still are able to get a lot of value from this spell. So I really enjoy it. Real quick, I am going to do this month's collector booster giveaway for patrons. Each month they get entries based on their tier, and this month I'm giving away a Tarkir Dragonstorm collector booster. So let's shuffle this up. We'll do 3 times. Okay, we'll spin it. All right, let's see what we get. Nice. Congrats, Obi-Rad, on the collector booster. I'll message you individually to see where you'd like me to ship it, but thank you so much for the continued support. It really does mean so much. And yeah, just like that, you know, we're getting back to the cards. Now we have Complete the Circuit, which is in 10,579 decks. This is a 6 mana instant, 5 generic, 1 blue, and it has Convoke. It says you may cast sorcery spells this turn as though they had flash. When you next cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copy. So this is one that I honestly overlooked for years. I opened up a lot of March of the Machines. I had this card, but I just glazed over it. I think mostly because of the casting cost. For the longest time, I was like, okay, if I'm paying 6, whatever instant or sorcery I'm next casting is going to be a small one because I literally just spent 6 mana. But I was really overlooking for the longest time how good Convoke is, because yeah, if you do have 5 tokens, you can tap those 5 tokens to pay for this, and it's just a pay 1. Now your next spell is copied twice, and you can cast sorceries on another person's turn. Yeah, Convoke is just really good, and it can even pay for 1 of the mana of that creature's color. So this can be completely free if you have 6 blue creatures on the board. I've mentioned this in past videos, but sorcery cast at instant speed breaks parity and is just so good. Like, imagine you cast this for free and then you cast on somebody else's turn a Clone Legion and copy it twice. Now you have their board times 3 blocking, and it's just wild. Or imagine this at instant speed casting a Mnemonic Deluge, or yeah, maybe we don't run Game Changers, but you cast this and then River's Rebuke and target a different opponent each time. So it's pretty much like a Cyclonic Rift at home. Copying twice, possibly for free, wild. Do notice that this one doesn't cast the copies, so it doesn't get the cast triggers that I'd mentioned earlier, but it does for Magecraft. And for some of the more niche cases of cards that care about it, this does tap down creatures too. So if you do have a deck that cares about your creatures being tapped, then this is a good one to use for that. Okay, this next card is Hunted by the Family, which is in 9,396 decks. It's 7 mana, 5 generic, 2 blue, for a sorcery that says choose up to 4 target creatures you don't control. For each of them, that creature's controller faces a villainous choice. That creature becomes a 1/1 white human creature and loses all abilities, or you create a token that is a copy of it. Nice. First of all, can someone let me know the context of this card? Because yeah, that art is just like so chilling. It's like horror movie vibes, but also not. I haven't seen this, but I just want to know, what is the story behind this? Sounds really cool. I really like this card because it acts as a removal spell or a pure value add for you. I also like it because it's not like other choice cards. Like, let's take, for example, Tempt with Discovery, where you can whiff because people don't take the bait. With Tempt with Discovery, it is a pure bonus that they were not expecting, and it's not key to their game plan. Like, with this card, the choices that they make, it's a lot more incentivized because, yeah, they invested all of their mana into the creatures or their commander, and it is in their deck for a purpose. So them denying you the value comes at the expense of losing their creature, or they can just let you have it and keep theirs. This card also says up to 4, meaning it gives you the flexibility as to how many you'd like to copy. This is relevant because, yeah, if it said 4, you wouldn't be able to cast it if you didn't have 4 targets. And it also gives you the option to politic and be flexible, which is always nice. So in relation to that politic aspect, it doesn't say it has to be across each opponent. It just says 4 target creatures you don't control. And so if someone has just the best board, you can take 4 creatures from the same person. And the last part of this that I think is nice, that it is the good kind of removal, because if you target 3 people's commanders and they don't let you have the copy, they can't just recast their commander for 2 extra mana, because their commander is now locked on the board, stuck in the form of a 1/1 do nothing with no abilities. So they'd have to find a way to kill it first and then pay the commander tax. So locking people's commanders on the board or copying it is truly a villainous choice. We have 4 cards left, and we're getting down to a lot more unpopular cards. Next up is Knowledge Exploitation, which is in 6,445 decks. It costs 7 mana, 5 of which is generic and 2 is blue, for a tribal sorcery rogue that has a prowl 4 cost, which means you can pay it with you can pay the prowl cost if you dealt damage to a player with a rogue this turn. This card says, search target opponent's library for an instant or sorcery card. You may play that card without paying its mana cost. Then that player shuffles his or her library. Nice. I love this card. I play it in my Emoti deck as well because I can cast their big cards. But I like this because it's different every time that you play it. And I like the cards that add variety to the game and take away from maybe a linear play style where it's the same game plan, same thing every single time. And yeah, I think the variety is really fun. You don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes you may end up with a 4 mana spell. Sometimes you may end up with an absolute banger. Who knows? You can try to target the player who you think is the most likely to have the best and most powerful spells in their deck, and maybe walk away with a massive game-ending spell. Like, you just never know. I like it too because this card helps me to get to know other people's decks, and I can see instants and sorceries that I otherwise would never play or put in any of my decks. Maybe there's a card that I've seen before, but I've never even considered it. But casting it and seeing what it can really do for me in that game, in that moment, would give me some new perspectives about, hey, I should reevaluate some of these cards that I've always overlooked. And the last part is, if you actually are playing a road deck, it's a really good ability that you can cast for cheap, but I've never cast it for the 4. I like paying even the 7 for it, and it has won me games before. Some people might be like, it's too inconsistent, but I like it, and it's done really good. Next up is Mass Polymorph, which is in 4,707 decks. This costs 6, it's 5 generic, 1 blue, for a sorcery that says, exile all creatures you control, then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal that many creature cards. Put all creature cards revealed this way onto the battlefield, then shuffle the rest of the revealed cards into your library. I play this in my Cody Vociferous Codex deck, focused on cast triggers and polymorph effects. So when I cast this, it's usually game over the turn that I cast this, because I turn 6 1/1 tokens and Cody into Niv Mizzet Perun, Etali Primal Conqueror, Velomachus Lorehold, Jadzi Oracle of Arcavios, Hullbreaker Horror, Gutter Snipe, and Ovika Enigma Goliath. So yeah, you turn all of these tokens into huge creatures, especially if you know what creatures you are, and can hit, it's really nice. On a kind of an unrelated note, I do want to make another Cody deck where I run Lila Undefeated Slickshot as the secret commander and the only other creature in the deck. She was one of my favorite commanders for a long time, then she hit over the 1,000 mark. But it is sad that she is limited to less than 75 possible Izzet spells if she is the commander. So I think that's why it'd be pretty fun as a secret commander in a 5 spell color deck. Synthetic Destiny does the same thing as this card, but it is an instant, but it also doesn't work until the next end step. So I actually prefer running Mass Polymorph instead of Synthetic Destiny, because for my decks, I want to use the creatures that I roll into the same turn that I cast it to take advantage of those, instead of waiting till the end step. One last thing about this, like I said, it is great with token decks. You do exile the cards, so if you do exile your commander, that's not a problem. But if you exile tokens, you also don't care about that because you wouldn't get them back anyways. If you are enjoying this video, please do consider joining our Patreon, where we have an amazing community focused on discussing all things unpopular Magic cards, use cases, and deck ideas as well. Our third to last card is Conspiracy Unraveler, which is in 4,500 decks. This is pretty niche. It's a 7 mana card, costs 5 generic and 2 blue for a Sphinx Detective. Alright, if I just mentioning Detective, you already know what set it's from if you're listening. It's from Murders at Karlov Manor. It's 6/6 for flying and says you may collect evidence 10, rather than paying the mana cost for spells that you cast. This card is good in the decks that can make this really good. Like I said, it is niche, but it's very strong. I played it in a few decks. One is in Set Modi deck because I don't have a ton of graveyard recursion and I'm playing a lot of big spells. And so I'm able to hit that collect evidence very quickly when I'm playing other big mana spells. And like I said, I'm not trying to get those sorceries or instants back because I'm not in a color that really casts those again. I also repurposed the Sultai Arisen deck, and this card has been very strong late in the game when my graveyard is just chock full. I can cast some huge creatures for free by just, collecting evidence while also activating my commander's ability and creating zombies when cards leave the graveyard. So yeah, this does have a few things that are really good for it. It has a good body. It also is able to cast things for free in decks that either you're playing big spells or in ones that you are creating a big graveyard but also have benefits for cards leaving the graveyard. The repurposing actually became a collect evidence deck and I've had a lot of fun with it. It's one of my favorite precons that I've upgraded and been really enjoying that. Next up we have Cast Through Time, which is in only 2,930 decks. This is a 7 mana enchantment that costs 4 generic and 3 blue. It says instant and sorcery spells you control have rebound. So for anyone not familiar with rebound, it says exile the spell as it resolves if you cast it from your hand. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast that card from exile without paying its mana cost. I actually remember opening this card back in the day from a Rise of the Eldrazi pack. That was back when Mythics meant something big, as you're just so stoked to see that red. The argument can be made that this is worse than cards that copy the instant and sorcery spells when you cast it. So think something like Swarm Intelligence, which is in actually 10 times more decks than Cast Through Time. And yeah, I get it. If you've seen this channel, you know how much I love doubling spells. But here is my argument for why this card can be better. First of all, Swarm Intelligence says you may copy that spell and choose new targets, but you do not cast the copies. With Rebound, you get the cast from the card from exile without paying its mana cost. So if you're in a deck that cares about casting your second or third spell in a deck, or you're in a Storm deck that you're trying to get as many spells cast in a turn as you can, Rebound is great for getting that spell count up for free. A second thing that I think is nice about Rebound is it spreads out the value across multiple turns, because sometimes doubling a spell can be win more, whereas spreading out the value can protect you or help you rebuild if you don't straight up win the game from casting a second copy. So think something like a Breach the Multiverse. If you copy it once and you get 4 creatures times 2 onto the battlefield, that's great. But a lot of them might not have haste. And if someone just casts a board wipe next turn, then that was all kind of for nothing. But if you cast it at the beginning of your next turn for free, then you just protected yourself from a board wipe and are already rebuilding. Or the last example is with Treasure Cruise. Maybe you draw 6 instead of 3, but you don't have enough mana anymore to cast it, and you have to discard 3 of the 6 cards that you just drew. So it's nice to be able to start your turn with 3 extra cards than last time. Lastly, if someone does cast or target cast through time, you can still cast your instants and give them rebound to make sure that they get the value next turn too, before your enchantment is destroyed. Has anyone ever played with this card? Let me know what you think, and what your thoughts are on rebound and this versus other cards that straight up just copy it at the time of casting. Our last card today is Mason the Mind Cage, which costs 7 mana. It's 4 generic and 3 blue for a legendary enchantment. It says all creatures get -X/-0, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So this one is an interesting one. It is not like any of the other cards that we've covered today, because many of the cards have been big spells or bombs that can win you the game with accrued value over time if it's not destroyed. This card, however, won't necessarily win you the game, but it can prevent a ton of decks from winning the game whose primary win con is combat, which I still think if you're playing casual Magic, most decks are winning through combat still. If you're a deck that plans to win not through combat damage, so whether that be milling your opponents, dealing non-combat damage through pinging, or proliferating poison counters, or combo wins, this card could cripple many decks in the late game that are gearing to win with combat and give you enough time to be able to pull out your win. If they don't have a way to remove this enchantment, most people will need to find a way to either give their creatures like +5/+5 or +7/+7 just to get to parity of what their creature was like without this. And they can still cast like a Crater Hoof, but barring many of those win conditions, this can just negate so many decks that depend on incremental combat damage over several turns to win the game. And so I included this as a bomb, more of a protection bomb. So if you're not planning to win, then this can cripple and prevent a lot of other people from winning. That's everything that I had today. Let me know what you thought, and if you think it would be worth covering bombs and big spells in other colors too. Either way, thanks so much everyone for being here. Don't forget to comment what topic you'd like me to cover next. I will pin a comment after 3 days and that will become a video. But thanks so much everyone for being here, and we'll see you next time.